case revolves around Native American issues, Native American oppression in the United States. I'm in prison because of Native American oppression.
There is absolutely no question in my mind that Leonard Peltier was fairly and justly convicted of the crime of murder, of the two murders of these two agents, and that the sentence was an appropriate one under the set of circumstances.
We hope to let the people in this area know what happened at our trial, what happened prior to our trial, and what has happened after the trial, to let them know the truth that is going on against the American Indians in this country, by the United States government.
Activists are calling for President Biden to grant clemency to America's longest-held Indigenous prisoner. Leonard Peltier is a Native American activist who was convicted of aiding and abetting the murder of two FBI agents after a controversial trial. He's currently serving 2 consecutive life imprisonment sentences. Leonard Peltier's attorney, Kevin Sharp, joins me now for more on the case to grant him clemency. Kevin, welcome. So the shooting of the FBI agents took place in 1975. You were first introduced to this case in 2019. What made you want to represent Mr. Peltier?
Open and obvious, and really bothered me as an officer of the court.
The counter-argument from the FBI, they say, quote, arguments that Peltier did not receive a fair trial have been repeatedly heard by the U.S. District Court, the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the U.S. Supreme Court. None have obviously prevailed. You're now pushing for President Biden to grant clemency. What is the basis for that?
One of the things they don't say is that they didn't engage in the misconduct. What they say is the courts upheld the conviction in spite of their misconduct, but it also required them to change their theory. Their theory had been that Mr. Peltier shot these agents. Once it was discovered that they hid exculpatory evidence, which is required to be turned over under the case of United States versus Brady, it was a ballistics test that showed Leonard Peltier did not shoot the agent. And so they changed their theory to one of aiding and abetting and said, well, he was there, along with about 40 other people. Yes, he was there. And so the standard of review was different at that time. Now, finding that kind of a constitutional violation would never be upheld. There was also a juror who admitted on day 2 that she was prejudiced against Native Americans, allowed to stay on the jury. That would never be upheld today. It's why James Reynolds, who was the U.S. attorney who took over the case, agrees that would never be upheld in the court today. This clemency needs to be granted. Our push right now is to get clemency from President Biden. This is really Leonard's last hope because of his age, because of his health problems. Clemency is it. It's just a time-served sentence reduction. It's what he deserves. It's really the next step in trying to heal the relationship with the federal government and the Native American community. Context matters, and it's hard to understand what happened on Pine Ridge in 75 without understanding Wounded Knee in 73 and Wounded Knee in 1890s, and all of the misconduct and broken treaties that happened before that. That's what led to this conflict and the FBI's involvement in picking a side in a local tribal dispute. It led to this conflict, and of course it happens, and it's the president's sole power at this point to fix that.
Okay, so Alexei, I want to talk about something that we sort of touched on this morning. And you might hate this, but I really want you to think about it. If you are killed, if this does happen, what message do you leave behind to the Russian people?
Alexei Navalny has taken on the most dangerous job in the world, challenging the leader of the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin.
If I want to be a leader of this country, if I want to fight Putin, I have to organize people.
Война в Украине и война в Сирии. Я прекращу войну.
The Kremlin hates Navalny so much, they refuse to say his name.
I was banned from everything and blacklisted. But as I became more and more famous, I was totally sure that it will be problematic for them to kill me.
And boy, were you wrong.
Yes, I was very wrong.
Alexei Navalny arrives at this hospital in Berlin.
To have your dad, an opposition leader, being poisoned, it was literally like a book.
Come on, poisoned? Seriously?
We were so shocked. It's like Putin's leaving a signature on a crime scene.
It's kind of stupid.
We found a domestic assassination machine on an industrial scale.
Navalny will personally call his poisoners one by one.
Это Навальный, Алексей, вас беспокоит. Хотел узнать, зачем вы хотели меня убить.
Oh my God, you ruined their day.
Navalny is stepping into a showdown with the Kremlin.
I want to go back and try to change Russia.
It's something worth fighting for.
Are you not scared, Alexei?
Поэтому бездействовать не надо.
Take a look, we're going through very high water. It's the only way to be delivering food. I'm so glad that we have this truck.
I hope we are able to feed the people, but I hope we are going to be safe.
I love the word cook, because the word cook in Spanish is cocinero. A cocinero is a person on the stove, feeling the fire.
For me, it was very clear that I wanted to create an organization that we will be able to respond to events that disturbs the lives of people.
I am Jose Andres. We're here with a simple mission, to make sure that food is an agent of change.
There's no food, no water.
Puerto Rico was a game changer in every aspect. He took a backpack, and I don't even know how they got there.
What we found when we landed was catastrophic.
In a crisis, you call on the experts. No one was calling on the cooks and chefs of the world when there were people who were hungry.
He was doing so much, and yet feeling like it wasn't sufficient.
I'm almost getting $1 million line of credit of money I don't even have.
I worry a lot when he goes because you never know what crazy thing he would do.
She's asking when we are coming back home.
Soon. We gotta feed some people, and then your dad can come back.
He's got big dreams and this vision, but it's always rooted in what's possible.
This is the spirit that will enter our kitchen, the pot that will fill the world.
Bueno, no hemos perdido clientes todavía. The emergency has this amazing way to speak to you. You only have to listen. You can listen to the situation. You can listen to the wind. You can listen to the people.
Politically, the thought that secessions could be in our future seems hyperbole. But just listen to Texas Senator Ted Cruz.
There may come a point where it's hopeless. We're not there yet. And if there comes a point where it's hopeless, then I think we take NASA, we take the military, we take the oil.
And Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene openly advocated for what she called a national divorce. Joining us now, novelist and culture writer Stephen Marche. He's the author of the new book entitled The Next Civil War, Dispatches from the American Future. I think is something that we really have to be concerned about, that between social media, Facebook, and ways that people can kind of, gin up their anger, that it doesn't just stop there.
No, I mean, it's a very growing movement. So, secession was really an extreme position about 20 years ago. Now it is much more mainstream. I mean, of course, the other thing is Ted Cruz says we're going to take these things. That, of course, is not at all how secession works. It's incredibly complicated. The U.S. Constitution makes it much more difficult than it is for any other country. And, of course, nobody's taking anything.
Walk us through what it would mean for this to happen. And in your estimation, is there any likelihood that it could?
Well, I mean, given the tensions in America right now, I actually think secession is kind of a best case scenario. I think it's a very reasonable conversation to be having. But the U.S. Constitution makes it more or less impossible. It's not constitutional. There's widespread legal agreement about that. And then there's the UN. Like, to become a new country, you need to have the support of the Security Council, and there's something called a home state veto. And, you know, there's kind of this romantic association with independence, like it's going to be a bunch of Texans raising their rifles over their heads saying, you know, don't mess with Texas. And that's all well and good until, you know, people won't land an airplane in your airport, or they, you know, the government turns off the internet in your district, and you can't exchange money, all of which require the UN to facilitate. So, you know, I think it's actually a conversation that America needs to have, but it's really, really tricky legally. It's not something that, you know, just because people want it, it'll happen.
Stephen, how does race and immigration factor into those that are in this growing movement?
You've put your finger on the nub of the key argument of my book. I mean, what I would say is that, you know, what you see all around the world is that as marginal populations come to equality, the privileged group rebels against that. They hate it. And you can see this all over the world. This is not just an American phenomenon. It's true about Hindus and Muslims in India. It's true all over Africa. And that process is happening in America. And what you see, you know, the really worrying thing about America, why I think secession is not necessarily a worst case scenario, is that violence is rising. You know, certainly violence against people of color, but just the general tolerance for political violence. I mean, a recent poll said 30% of Americans were willing to use violence against their own government. So, you know, you've put your finger on the nub, but I think the consequences of that are rising violence. And the question really is, how do you deal with that rising violence? How do you prevent it?
Hello everybody, I'm Dropoff and the musician band ANTYTILA. Now we are driving out from our positions on the front line directly to our base. So we are situated in Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, and I wanted to show one day from the war. So our command is a medical command, so our main task is to give first aid to the injured soldiers. So what we are doing right now, we are sharing the chemical protection suits and gas masks to the warriors of our battalion. We are moving to Irpin. We need to check out the evacuation roads. We're now a few minutes to the point, and when you come in, you should like to put in the magazine. Destroyed by the Russian fire, houses, and thousands of killed by the Russians, troops, people, Ukrainian people. You should know this, that we have no choice but to defend our country. And now I'm stated in the one of the couple vocational points, like stabilization and vocational points.
Hey, I'm Andrew. I'm a paramedic from the United States. We're here in Irpin, a city that was overrun by the Russians in the beginning of the war. And now over the last few days, the Ukrainians have been able to retake Irpin. And it's still been under some rocket and mortar fire, but all in all, the Ukrainians are doing a lot of good work trying to push the Russians out of their homeland and out of their territories. We're here in full support of the Ukrainians in their fight for the freedom of their country.
24 hours before it was a battle here, so you can see now the smells of the war is strongly. Despite the war, the Ukrainians preparing a dinner, very good dinner. It will be a borscht, the famous Ukrainian borscht. The last picture is the destroyed bridge. I think you have seen this bridge, so it's like a symbol of destroyed destinies of a lot of people. So this bridge was destroyed at the first days of the war. But we recaptured this city, and we will get back all Ukrainian cities, and we will get victory in this war. We believe in this, we know this. Слава Україні! Героям слава!
Cut me off, you son of a bitch! Get the hell out that car! Get the hell out right now! I'm gonna tear you a new. Come on, get out! I'm gonna beat the. Hey, I didn't know it was you.
Victoria, Ogden Point. This is the Marche contender. We're approaching your terminal and arriving shortly. Thanks for having us.
Right there you see the Marche contender, Marche trader. Our two boats that just returned from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. They're carrying System 2, Jenny, which we've just proven to work and to be an effective way to collect plastic. And they're carrying tons and tons of trash that we've taken out during this test campaign.
Look at this, fantastic. All our Victoria friends came out to see us.
Good to see you, buddy.
Same. Hello.
How are you?
We're here today to celebrate the fact that we have completed the test campaign and we've reached proof of technology. Now for us that means that we've gone through a series of tests offshore, we've validated the data, and we now have a solution which we believe we can scale. And also it has shown that this system can repeatedly extract large amount of plastic.
Proof of technology really means that now humanity has found this tool in which we can actually clean up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Until today, you could be the most knowledgeable person in the world, you could be the richest person in the world, but you would have no way to clean it up. I'm confident that now that we have the tools to do it, it will happen. think this is a great day for the ocean, and yeah, let this mark the beginning of the end for the Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
We believe that this waste still has value and shouldn't be just thrown away, but repurposed instead. So what we will do with this plastic is we will recycle it and create new products.
So going forward, there's really two things that we will be doing. On one hand, we're continuing the operation of System 2, trying just to get going, start the cleanup. In the meantime, we have already started the development of System 3, which is going to be the first full-scale cleanup system. The idea is that that's going to be the blueprint of the whole fleet. And then if we have 10 of those systems, that should be enough to actually clean up the garbage patch. It's real, we can do this. As long as we want this to happen, we're going to clean the Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox. Well, new video coming in right now from D.C., where a bus from Texas has arrived this morning transporting dozens of illegal immigrants as part of Texas Governor Greg Abbott's new plan to counter federal immigration policies during an ongoing border crisis. Abbott announced just last week that he was directing the Texas Division of Emergency Management to transport migrants released from federal custody in Texas to the nation's capital and other locations outside his state. The bus pulled up at approximately 8 a.m., just blocks away from the U.S. Capitol. Fox News has learned that they come from the Del Rio sector in Texas after coming in to the U.S. from Colombia, Cuba, and Venezuela. Upon the bus's arrival in D.C., individuals disembarked one by one, except for family units who exited together. They checked in with officials and had wristbands they were wearing cut off before they were told that they could go. According to Abbott's plan, he says it's already working. The agency told Fox News on Monday that they have many of the communities that originally reached out for support from the Rio Grande Valley to Terrell County say the federal government stopped dropping immigrants in their town since Abbott's announcement just on April 6th. Some have questioned whether Abbott's plan to bus migrants was genuine. The White House dismissed it as a publicity stunt. Even Texas State Representative Matt Schaefer, a Republican, called it a gimmick. Well, now we have the video to prove that Abbott was not calling it a gimmick at all. Still, the governor's legal authority to transport busloads of migrants to the U.S. Capitol remains in question. The 2012 Supreme Court case, Arizona versus the United States, prevents states from making their own immigration policies there. Abbott insists that the federal government is failing to adequately address the situation. President Biden recently announced that he would be rescinding Title 42, which was used to expel migrants swiftly due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In a tweet today from Greg Abbott, he said, first Texas bus drops off illegal immigrants blocks from U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. Biden refuses to come see the mess he's made at the border, so Texas is bringing the border to him.
Before that I died, that any mistake would be corrected.
In 1961, Abraham Bolden was personally tapped by President John F. Kennedy to become the first African American in the Secret Service's Presidential Protection Detail. His time at the agency included awards for arresting suspected counterfeiters. He also says he witnessed a pattern of dereliction of duty in many fellow agents protecting the president, including drinking on the job.
The first thing they did when we arrived in Hyannisport, Massachusetts, was went out and got bottles of liquor, a case of beer, and that was basically breakfast and dinner.
When President Kennedy was assassinated on November 22, 1963, Bolden took it personally.
In not doing our best job, we caused a lot of harm to the nation.
He says his conscience drove him to speak out about missed opportunities to prevent the tragedy, including several involving the city of Chicago, and he sought to speak to the Warren Commission. But by the following May, authorities accused him of attempting to sell a government file to Joseph Spagnoli Jr. in exchange for $50,000. That file, evidence for a case in which Spagnoli was named as the head of a counterfeiting ring.
By me being outspoken and challenging the Warren Commission report, I think that delayed my pardon.
Bolden's case went to trial twice, a hung jury in the first one, a conviction in the second, based on what historians later called weak evidence.
You can either let the incarceration become a part of you, or you can conquer it.
After his release, he worked in the tool and die business, raised a family, wrote many books about the power of truth, and never wavered in his duty to protect.
Did you love President Kennedy?
Yes, very much.
Mr. Bolden is hoping that young people will see his pardon as a reason to believe once again in American principles and work towards a country that President John F. Kennedy imagined. In Chicago, Ravi Bajwal, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
I started to run trails, and after reconnecting with Lewis last year, I told him that I wanted to have more adaptive athletes on trails, and we wanted to start an adaptive athlete division. And so we started contacting companies, and then one day Lewis just said, let's just do it at the ranch. He said, how do you like the name Born to Adapt? And I loved it. So with his support, this event is happening for the first time. And my big dream is to have this happening all over the country and bring Born to Adapt everywhere, so people like myself and these athletes that you just saw can experience the things that we love. So that's my big dream, and I really want to thank Lewis for giving me the stage to make it happen. So thank you, Lewis.
Woo! Loop the loop.
First lap so far!
Can't see my bike.
There you go.
Alright, we got a flat tire. There we go.
You got a flat tire?
Me.
Oh, you. Ah. You guys coming?
She's in charge.
Yeah. You ready? Yeah. Do it. Ted, are you gonna spot?
I'll spot. What am I spotting? Right here.
Yeah,
Remember?
He's 10. Gosh, 10.
Did you dream about doing this? More than halfway there. I think Brian's gonna want to come on the pilgrimage too. Wait, let me guess. I'm gonna guess something like.
The homeless crisis. We immediately think of people struggling on the streets, but we sometimes forget there's another vulnerable population, homeless pets.
Gina Silva has a story of a man who has not forgotten that. She introduces us to LA's street vet.
I can tell you that man is respected and loved in the homeless community. In LA County, there are more than 66,000 people living in the streets, and many of them have pets, dogs and cats that rarely get medical attention.
Number 2.
Veterinarian Quan Stewart and nurse Genesis Rendon hit the streets of Los Angeles every week, offering free medical services for pets of the homeless.
A lot of the work is preventative care, so it's deworming, vaccines, flea and tick prevention. Sometimes I'll do nail trims.
What's your name?
In this case, there are 3 young pups to care for, Apala, Tasha, and Toot.
What are the ages?
7 months.
They'll be getting a set of vaccines, rabies and parvo.
The most important one that we deliver to really any dog, especially a puppy, is the parvo vaccine, because parvo is prevalent out here on the streets, and it's a killer. The parvovirus is deadly to puppies.
What do you think about what this gentleman is doing?
Oh, I think it's beautiful. Yeah.
Across the street.
She's the bougiest dog on the block.
You got so many clothes.
You have clothes for her?
She does. A lot of outfits. Kara says her dog Powder helps her cope with the harshness of being homeless.
So when I'm sad, she makes me happy. When I'm lonely, she fills that void.
On this day, Powder gets an examination and a rabies shot. Overall, Quan says this pooch is healthy and vibrant.
Here's the thing about a lot of the pets on the streets. They are so well behaved and so socialized, much more so than any of the pets I typically meet in the clinic.
Mainly because they're always around lots of people and their owners are always with them.
Overwhelmingly, they give great care to their pets, make sacrifices far beyond what you and I would make for our pets.
Quan is going on more than 10 years providing free medical care for these animals. It can get costly. That's why he established Project Street Vet, a nonprofit that accepts donations and volunteers.
I'm just at the stage of developing the nonprofit where I'm going to start training other veterinarians to do the same work, which is exciting.
Exciting and oh so rewarding.
There was a time in my career where I felt like leaving the profession, and I started doing this work and it revitalized me.
You guys are babies.
I want to spread the message that kindness does sort of heal the world.
Gina Silva, Fox 11 News.
Ну это, блядь, хит нахуй, пиздец. Спиздили технику, блядь. Охуеть. Ну это, блядь, хит нахуй, пиздец. Спиздили технику, блядь. Охуеть. Это, блядь, хит нахуй, пиздец. Спиздили технику, блядь. Охуеть.
Our Rio Grande provides water for hundreds of farms throughout the state. But how do farms further away from the river get the water they need?
Yeah, Action 7 News reporter Angel Salcido takes us inside the history of an acequia, a tool that farmers in our state have used for centuries.
Grandpa would be sweating and he'd wiggle that old plow out and set it back down.
Meet Don Bustos.
Kick off his hat like this and he'd go swipe the sweat off his brow, and at the same time he'd say, "Ojalá!"
His family has farmed this land in Española for generations.
He would tell me, "Here, mijito, grab the reins of this mule and you guide that mule down that furrow."
And in a desert climate with snow-capped mountains, Don's family's farm has survived through this, their historic acequia.
This acequia is over 400 years old. It's 7 miles long. And it was dug by hand with wooden shovels and sticks.
And that's not even the most impressive thing about it.
Our acequia is one of the only acequias in New Mexico that flow north. All the other acequias flow south, right?
It brings water all the way from the Santa Cruz Reservoir to his farm in Española.
And I stand here, I don't even know if they could do that with the Google GPS nowadays, no.
But it doesn't just bring water to Don and his family. Each acequia has a barranco, which is a ravine where the water flows, and these access gates that can be raised or lowered. Don is the mayordomo of his acequia, so he controls his access gate and decides how much water is released further downstream.
Before there was a U.S. government, before there was a Mexican government or anything, the law of the land, law of the water.
Acequias like Don's have been a staple in New Mexican culture for more than 400 years. You can find them everywhere, from here in Española. Even here in the metro, our state has around 700 different acequias, and each one of them has a very important purpose.
The acequia is the lifeblood of New Mexico. We're able to grow food 12 months a year using nothing but solar energy. The way we get our water supply is from the acequias in the stream.
This acequia has given lifelong memories to Don and his family.
And I remember being down in the bottom field irrigating the cornfields. The barranco is where the water flows in the ditch now, and broke. I told my little brother, Avran, lay across there, Avran, and I'll throw dirt on you. So I was madly throwing dirt on the water, controlling it. I thought it was good. My mom caught up to me. I'm throwing your brother in the acequia, and what are you doing? You're not paying attention.
From his elders?
I came up for lunch, to eat lunch, and she goes, hey, mijito, I'm feeling a little tired. I'm gonna go take a nap. So I walked her from my house across that bridge you're standing on. She went to sleep and never woke up again. I got to walk her across the bridge to her next life. Estamos bendecidos.
All the way to the next generation.
I got a grandson that's at college, and he goes, Grandpa, when I get out of college, I'm gonna come back and teach you how to really farm. So I go, great. No, so
Don says the tradition and culture behind the acequia will live on.
It's more than a livelihood, it's a passion. Viva las acequias!
Angel Salcido, KOAT, Action 7 News.